4 years ago this month, I was elected the 7th president of Woodward Academy. Following the announcement of my election, I received numerous words of congratulations from people around the state and region. One of the first persons to reach out to me when I arrived at my office on Monday morning at LaGrange College, where I was serving as president at the time, was from my captain, William R. Brewster. I had done some of my homework about the Woodward history as a part of the search process before my election, but I had not appreciated then fully the man who was calling me on the phone. In that brief conversation we had, Bill was wonderfully warm and encouraging and affirming about my selection as president and offering his help in any way he could, ending the conversation by saying he wanted to register that he hoped that we would restore the junior ROTC program at Woodward. Subsequent to that phone call, 4 years later, I have been blessed to have dozens of visits and phone conversations with Bill, to understand fully his passion and commitment and love for Woodward Academy, and to experience in all of that a real blessing and gift from me, and that was his support and encouragement of me as president. Institutional presidencies are often judged by the numbers. If you look at the benchmark data of when a person begins as president and ends as president, have the numbers improved? If you look at the numbers from 1960 to 1979, the times of Bill's presidency here, one would have to say emphatically that Bill's presidency was an enormous success. Now, to hear the numbers in 2012 years, they may not sound as grand, but from 1960 to 1970 years, they were stunning accomplishments. Enrollment nearly doubled to 1,600 students. There was a five-fold increase in the endowment to over $3 million. Numerous facilities, including this chapel, were constructed to the tune of nearly $7 million. And first ever fundraising campaigns were initiated during his tenure that resulted in $6.5 million in donations. Absolutely remarkable. To limit an understanding of Bill's presidency, however, to the numbers would be to do a discredit to his commitment to this place and what he accomplished. For as Ben so eloquently articulated, Bill's true mark on this institution was in the lives that he touched. In 4 years, I have heard numerous Bill Brewster stories from alums, either in person or in writing. He was always referred to as the captain or Captain Brewster. Even if encouraged to call him by his first name, those of his era refused to do so because of their awe and their reverence for him. I would even say in some instances, maybe he was feared. He was, if not a father figure to many of the students here, at least a role model, a disciplinarian, a person who affirmed, a person who knew to provide encouragement when encouragement was needed for a struggling student. He did it individually with students, and he did so collectively, and sometimes in surprising and unexpected ways. A series of letters were written to Bill on the occasion of his 87th birthday. And in those letters, graduates offered many I remember when stories. Unfortunately, I could not identify the author of this particular story, but it seemed to me particularly poignant and appropriate to share at this occasion. The person was writing about the experience of students at Woodward in the 60s, a time when there was often tension between the students of GMA and the teenagers of College Park. There was no love lost between the two. GMA students were jeered and taunted, called bellhops because of the uniforms that they had to wear. And it was not uncommon that as the boarding students were in their rooms studying at night, teenagers from the area would come by either in person or in automobiles to continue the taunting. Well, one night, the GMA students had had enough. The automobile had gone up and down the street one too many times, and on this occasion, the students could take no more, ran outside, picked up brick pavers, and as the automobile made its way down the street, pummeled the car with those brick pavers, with the automobile taking off in a flash. The writer tells the rest of the story this way. The next day, the underground communication system bustled of the frustration and anger of the administration at the actions of a few renegade students. We were certain the entire campus would be restricted until further notice. We would be urged to turn ourselves in, eventually found out, and subsequently shipped home. Our fate was sealed. We knew a convocation would be called. We would be forced to sit wide-eyed as Captain Brewster ranted on and on about the disappointment of our families, the shame of the school, the frustration of our peers. It would be awful. All for that one moment of revenge. God and others would punish us severely forever. The convocation began as usual. Introductions, announcements, reminders. Finally, Captain Brewster spoke of his communications with the College Park Police Department, the recent destruction of a very new and very expensive Cadillac sedan, obviously at the hands of GMA students. Now the railing on and on would begin. The exact words of Captain Brewster now elude me these many years later, but the essence of his remarks have stuck. Gentlemen, the College Park Police Department has asked me to address the destruction of the vehicle with the responsible students. Please consider yourselves so addressed. With that, convocation ended in cheers. Bill was revered and feared not just on campus by faculty and students and alumni, but he was revered by colleagues in the independent school sector, locally, regionally, and across the United States. Thanks to Bill's efforts, he understood that the success of independent education in Atlanta and Georgia would only be as good as the collaboration among the similar schools in the area. And today, organizations such as the Atlanta Area Association of Independent Schools and the Georgia Independent School Association have their genesis in the efforts that Bill Brewster took in bringing together colleagues to discuss issues of common concern, and to collaborate with one another. As an example of his impact on his peers outside of Woodward, he received a letter on the occasion of his retirement as president from James McCauley of McCauley School in Chattanooga, who at the time was the president of the Brookstone School in Columbus, Georgia. Mr. McCauley wrote these words to Bill, which I think could be uttered not only by his peers, but by those who at Woodward knew him as well. Bill, I have been grateful for your crusty example, for your penny-pitching, outspoken, hard-nosed, head-on, forthright, and painfully honest ways. We have needed you, Bill, and you have provided tremendous help and leadership for all of us in managing our schools. I got to experience that crustiness occasionally in my interactions with him, not the least of which was in January of this year. His health was declining, his mental state on some days uncertain, but on this occasion, when I went to see him, with Helen's help, we had a delightful visit at the place where he was staying in Alpharetta. As I got up to leave, I said, "Bill, tomorrow the governing board is going to have a meeting, and I'm going to take delight in sharing with them that you are still a gentleman and a scholar." Without missing a beat, he said, "And if you do, they'll know you're a damn liar." Well, Bill saved his crustiness for the most consequential set of decisions that he made in the entire existence of GMA and Woodward. That period between 1964 and 1966, as Ben has suggested, when military education was abandoned, women were added, the school became integrated, and the name of the institution changed. Thank goodness for his crustiness. Thank goodness for his courage in standing up to those who opposed him on that very important decision. Even students were opposed to what Bill was doing, and Guy Gunn wrote this letter to Bill in 1987 with these reflections. "And there was that awful announcement that GMA was dropping military and becoming coeducational. A group of seniors was so devastated that we met for weeks under the kind and watchful eye of Major Ted Hayes to organize our opposition to the new direction of the school. We were sure we could change your decision with logical arguments that you obviously had not considered. Hill Hammock and I met with you to present our masterfully written manifesto. Somehow it didn't sound so good when you read it out loud in our presence. I always regretted that we let you read it instead of Hill. You were respectful and polite, but unwavering in your resolve to make the change. Even now, I can only imagine the weight of that decision and the courage it took to make it in light of the tradition and pride that GMA had accumulated over the decades. And of course, you were right again. Thank you from all of us who now see what the school has become and realize how critically important your decision was." There are a number of books these days that are written on the topic of leadership. I've recently concluded a book with the title Courage. The case study for that book could have been Bill Brewster's leadership of Woodward during his tenure here. The book argues that in leadership, courage requires one to have vision, to see beyond the current state of affairs, to understand a preferred future for the organization. A person who can listen and balance opposing points of view. A person who can persevere despite the obstacles in the way of decisions that you are certain in your heart are in the best interests of the organization that you represent. Now, my administration is 4 presidents removed from that of Bill Brewster's and over 3 decades of time. But each and every day, I give thanks that I am fortunate to preside over an institution that had left for it such an important and remarkable legacy as that led by Captain William R. Brewster, Jr. The last words of my comments are going to come from Jimmy Jones, class of 1965, a member of our governing board who wanted to be here today, but his schedule would not permit. And he asked that I share these thoughts, which I offer in conclusion. Somehow it is 2012, and all of you are gathered in the chapel at Woodward Academy to celebrate the life of William R. Brewster, Jr., affectionately known by thousands associated with Georgia Military Academy and then Woodward Academy as the Captain. In his unique case, it is not so much, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," as it is, "Oh, Captain, our Captain." I suppose it is a commentary on my own passing in review that I can recall as if it were yesterday, or no farther back than last Wednesday, when two of my buddies and I sat in the last row of Patterson's funeral home on Spring Street when Colonel Brewster had died. I recall as if it were yesterday watching one luminary from GMA's history after another file all in black into the chapel on Spring Street to mourn the great man. And now, in the blink of the proverbial eye, all of you are gathered in the chapel at Woodward today as another of the great GMA Woodward luminaries passes into history. My family's association with the Captain goes back half of a century. The Captain took my brother and me, fatherless, lost tykes, into his family's military academy and turned two wayward boys into men. When my late kid brother could not stand living at home anymore, the Captain quietly gave him a room in Memorial Hall so that my brother Jeff could be the last Cadet Corps commander. When the Vietnam War was raging, I turned down my residential fellowship to do my doctorate at Columbia, and the Captain all of a sudden found a teaching position for a 21-year-old, and then remarkably for my wife Jan. In these 50 years, I saw the Captain deal with matters trivial and consequential, such as ending the military and co-educating the school in the period between 65 and 67. As we learned in the Latin class, Cicero always uses the phrase "rare bird" as the highest possible praise. Cicero could have well characterized the fallen Roman hero, otherwise known as the Captain, our Captain, for the decency of his every action, his nobility of spirit, and his prescient generosity to one and all, which comprise the legacy that he leaves his children, his grandchildren, and all of us whose lives were so graciously touched by his for more than 90 years. Thanks be to God for the life and witness of Captain William R. Brewster, Jr.